Back to my guest this week, Dr Romana Hussain. So how do we tackle the problem?
We can use a two-pronged strategy, one at the personal level and one at the political level. At the personal level, as it's difficult to make everything from scratch in the traditional way, and as most of us don't want to live off veg juices, etc., and as it's British food that people in the UK desire, then why not take the path of least resistance and re-engineer British food to become quicker and easier to make, whilst having all the nutrients that a Mediterranean diet has, whilst still looking and tasting like ordinary British food?
But it's not possible to change long-standing recipes for things such as cakes, is it?
British people believe that such a transformation is an impossibility, and moreover, they believe that some foods such as sausages and chocolate can only ever really be made by specialists. However, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, literally. We can, and do, re-engineer anything and everything these days.
Wow, okay, so is this something that you have done?
Yes, I used methods from state-of-the-art engineering to re-engineer 60 British dishes into superfoods, which combat and can even reverse some forms of ill health and obesity. They were also re-engineered to be very quick and much easier to make. These dishes were systematically tested on members of the public for taste and look, as well as ease and speed of preparation. A selection of these re-engineered recipes are in the companion recipe book, which will be available early in 2023, called The Great British Food Hack.
That's so interesting. So what sort of dishes did you re-engineer?
Cakes was one. Cakes are usually thought of as being fairly unhealthy, as they typically contain white flour, butter or margarine, and sugar. However, almonds are pale yellow. They contain carbohydrate, healthy fats, and are naturally sweet. They're also anti-obesity. Thus, through investigation and experimentation, soaked almonds, which are roughly ground, it was found resemble cake crumbs, and so, using those as a base, cakes can be made that look and taste like usual cakes, but which require no baking skills or indeed any type of cooking, and they can be made in minutes. In the taste tests conducted, nearly everyone thought that the cakes were usual baked cakes. Some people even became angry when they were told that raw almonds had been used and that they hadn't been cooked. They thought I'd made it up, and I had to take them to the food lab and show them how I'd actually made them.
That's so interesting.
Mayonnaise was another dish. Mayonnaise is thought of as being unhealthy and extremely difficult to make. However, I re-engineered this to become extremely healthy, anti-obesity, and to be very quick to make, in fact foolproof. That re-engineered recipe contains a large proportion of extra virgin olive oil, but because of the way I re-engineered it, the mayonnaise tastes as delicious as usual mayonnaise. It can be very difficult to get British people to consume items such as almonds and olive oil, both of which feature in the Mediterranean diet, and to get them to consume such items in any meaningful quantity. But such re-engineered recipes make that possible and doable.
Okay, so those recipes would mean that people can start to really kind of take control of their health straight away. That's the personal level, but you also mentioned the political level.
Yes, there are times when it's basically impossible to make even the quickest and easiest of things, such as when you're travelling or have to stay away from home. You just simply can't take your kitchen with you. Or times when you're so overloaded with work, or when you're ill. This is why we need a source of ready-made food that's guaranteed to be healthy. And this should be government policy, because it's not something that can be totally addressed at the personal level. This is the conclusion in my other book, The Big Food Crisis, which will also be available in 2023. It's also one of the conclusions in my recently published research paper in Global Health Governance.
But isn't there manufactured food which is healthy?
It can be difficult to know which may or may not be healthy. Remember that Heinz was censured by the Advertising Standards Authority a few years ago for claiming that their tomato soup had 2 portions of fruit and veg when only there was 1. That's half the amount. So labels are not only often incomprehensible, but they can even be dishonest.
Yeah, I have to say that even as somebody who is familiar with nutrition, I do struggle with understanding labels sometimes, much less being able to really understand whether it's something that's good for me or not. So how exactly do you think a government scheme could be set up to provide healthy, ready-made food?
Manufactured food is big business, and manufacturers wield enormous political influence. Therefore, rather than butt heads with manufacturers, a politics strategy could be for joint ventures between the government and food manufacturers to create a fixed set of government-approved dishes. And the whole manufacturing process and engagement of suppliers would be primarily sanctioned and overseen by governmental food specialists who would be at the food manufacturer's premises to ensure that wholesome ingredients and cooking methods were used, such as those typically used at home, which means not using excessive sugars, additives and so forth. Food manufacturers have honed capabilities in food production, marketing and political manoeuvring, which could be harnessed for dietary health, and there could be many manufacturers who would want the kudos of winning large governmental contracts. Although healthful food from such joint ventures could be more costly, the cost could be mitigated by less burden on the NHS. You see, diabetes is set to explode. We have to do something, and we have to do it now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So members of the public would be able to purchase these healthy items directly?
Yes, there could be online purchasing. What would be really good would be if a week's provisions could be packaged to be nutritionally complete and portion controlled. That way, when we're busy or ill, we can simply purchase a box and know that our diet is sorted. The items could be ordinary things such as healthy tomato soup, baked beans, bread, cottage pie and so on. It would also be good if the government could assert that eateries and shops also stock a little of this ready-made food, so that when we're out and about we can consume something that's guaranteed to be healthful and not stuffed with additives and so forth.
Yeah, I really like the sound of that because I think that ease of access is so important, as you said, because we have such busy lives. And this could be really useful for university students staying away from home.
Yes, and for parents of young children. Everyone wants their children to have a healthy diet, but calculating the portion sizes, exact nutrients to be present each day, and so on can be really very difficult for busy parents. In fact, it's almost impossible for just about everyone. Also, rather than treat people who have type 2 diabetes with medication for the rest of their lives, in the USA, prescription food packs are now being used so that diabetes can be reversed just by eating healthy food. We also need to do that in the UK, and such healthy food packs would make this a possibility. The continuing increase in non-communicable diseases such as diabetes is set to buckle the NHS in the very near future. tackling the issue of diet-related ill health by 1. Re-engineering food, and 2. by having a governmentally approved source of ready-made food would greatly help to turn this tide.
Oh, thank you so much for this interview, and we'll look forward to the release of the book, or the two books actually, The Great British Food Hack and The Big Food Crisis in 2023. I certainly will be getting my copies. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Well, what an important conversation to have had today with Dr. Romana Hussain. Diet-related ill health, we need to be tackling this in a much more effective way. And I really enjoyed listening to how Dr. Hussain believes we can do this from her own work. As I mentioned at the beginning, she's a British research scientist, and that whole conversation about re-engineering food is a fascinating one. But we have done so many things. Why would that not be possible? Really left me with some food for thought, excuse the pun, but it's definitely one of those conversations we need to be having. And watch out for her books coming in 2023. Like me, I'm sure you'll want to get your hands on the copies, and it's The Great British Food Hack and The Big Food Crisis coming your way in 2023. On that note, I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed this week's show. You've been listening to the Women's Power Hour show with me, Yvonne B, here at Soma Valley 97.5 FM.